So what I want you to tell me is, how do I get the right tight ends? How do you know which ones are going to smash eventually? And is quarterback or tight end a more fantasy or a more difficult position to scout for fantasy?
I would definitely agree that tight end's a lot harder to scout. And I think the one thing you kind of harp on is like trying to find the next guy. Like a lot of it really is the fact is there's almost exclusively repeat performers at the tight end position. Like they are rare, and the guys to do it are probably going to be the guys who do it again. And like you just see like, when you line up like the past 10 years, even like all of the top seasons, it's the same guys, like their names like 5-6 times, like over and over again. Like there just aren't many people at the tight end position who will get to a point of mattering at any point in their career, because it probably is like one of the hardest positions to play in football because they're asked to do so many different things.
Yeah, no, it's wild. Like I was really into Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson as rookies. It's like, oh, like these guys are some of the best prospects we've ever seen. They're freak athletes. They're, high draft capital. They went to teams that are probably likely to use them. And then they just didn't get any of those things. And like, they're fine. Like Noah Fant has been a top 12 tight end twice, I think. Maybe only once. TJ Hawkinson was like a top 5 tight end once already. And nobody cares because he only scored like 12 points. But that's because tight ends don't score a lot of points. And then you have these like out of nowhere guys like Travis Kelce, to be fair, was like a 3rd round pick. And I think he like tore his ACL as a rookie or something crazy like that. And didn't really do anything until I think it was his 3rd year, I think, in the NFL when he really kind of popped. And then when he popped, it was like amazing. And you have like Darren Waller, who didn't do anything for like 10 years. Okay, that's a bit excessive. I don't know how many years it was. A lot of years. George Kittle was like kind of one of the more common paths. And he was like a 5th round pick. Like, I don't know if you were playing Dynasty in George Kittle's rookie year, but I remember like kind of being into him. And then in the summer, they had another tight end called, what was his name? Vance McDonald, I believe. And Vance McDonald was set to be the starting tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. And then on like the eve of the season, they traded him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And George Kittle, like this 5th round unknown pick, just like moves into the starting lineup, puts up like 500 yards as a rookie, which is really impressive. And the rest is history. And
I think I want to like cut in there before we get to another topic, because that's always been like something I've tried to push back on. Like people look at Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Darren Waller as these guys who came out of nowhere, right? Like you couldn't see them coming. But when I chart these players, you could see these players coming. Like for the most part, these players look good. It's green in their profiles. Like let's talk about Travis Kelce. Like first of all, we got to talk about the profiles. All right, before we let's
talk about the profiles. Good place to start.
Before we get to Travis Kelce's profile and George Kittle's profile and Darren Waller's profile, we got to talk about the profile. Like we're looking at basically everything that is predictive. Obviously, draft capital, number one. I know you've written a thread on that. I've got the numbers if we need to pull them up. Actually, but before we can get to the draft capital, I'm going to go in order of my list. So first you start with the basics, height and weight. Like we just want to know, what are they shaped like? Like, is this guy an outlier shape? Are they someone who, do you see a lot of people perform at a high level like this shape? Basically, are they above 6'7", 6'8"? Because you don't see a lot of guys like that. Are they below 220 pounds? Like these are things you don't see a lot at the tight end position of players performing at a high level at extremes. So we just want to look at that, see if there's any red flags there. And then we look at obviously the draft capital. It's a thread written by you, and I remember it because I put it in my Kyle Pitts thread because everybody was like, it doesn't matter that Kyle Pitts was drafted high, like a tight end's unpredictable. And basically you're like, that's not why I don't like Kyle Pitts. Like I like draft capital a lot. And
I'm pretty sure I know exactly which thread you're talking about.
Yeah. So you just go through the numbers and you're looking at the hit rates for, I think it's like a top 12 finish, right? So we got at round 7, it's 0 for 26, 0%. Round 6, 4 for 23, 17%. Round 5, 4 for 25, 16%. Round 4, 7 for 32, 21%. Round 3, 10 for 35, 28%. Round 2, 12, 28, 42%. That's pretty damn good. Round 1, 15 to 16, 93%. So, like, those guys are hitting a top 12, so like automatic pretty much round 1.
Oh, yeah.
So draft capital is something huge that matters. And then people want to hold this against Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, without even dissecting why did these guys not have draft capital? First of all, Travis Kelce was drafted with the first pick in the 3rd round. He's 1 pick away from being a 2nd-round pick. This is a guy who was suspended his entire entire season at Cincinnati. He was suspended. All right. Then he goes to the combine. He's out misses the combine with a hernia injury. So we have character concerns, injury concerns. This guy still drafted with the first pick in the 3rd round. He would be a 1st or 2nd round pick if you throw those out. He had a 27% dominator at Cincinnati. That's green. Anything above 20% is good. 25, that's really good. He was at 16 yards per reception. He has a 79 percentile catch radius. This is like green across the board. And he might have run a 40. I have like a 4.61 with an asterisk. It might have been at a pro day. But still, 4.61 adjusted 4.66. That's not a bad time. Like, he doesn't have any red flags for Travis Kelce. Like, it's not surprising at all that Travis Kelce turned into a really good player, especially when you talk about what he did in his first actual season. And we saw like him be efficient, have him have good volume. So after that first season, looking at the profile, you should have been all in on Travis Kelce. Like, that was predictable, number 1. Darren Waller, I encourage anybody who wants to know why Darren Waller fell to the 6th round to go watch the Darren Waller story on YouTube, because this guy had known drug issues. John Harbaugh himself is interviewed for this, and he says it. They were talking about this guy. Why is this guy not a 1st or 2nd round pick? Oh, he's got off the field issues. He's got, these other stuff going on. These teams knew Darren Waller had issues. And that's why he was not relative or doing anything at first. He was suspended. He was on drugs. Watch the Darren Waller show. He was heavily on drugs. But you look at his profile, Darren Waller had a 32% dominator. That's green. I have 2 greens. I have light green, which is good, and then I have like above 30. That's green. And he was getting wide receiver usage when he was at this Georgia Tech offense. 4.46, 30, 40, 37.5, 37-inch vertical. He had a 17 yards per reception in college, like 96 percentile catch rates. Everything on paper is green for this dude, except for draft capital, when we know that he had drug issues. So don't tell me Darren Waller came out of nowhere, because you can see it right on paper. You saw him coming. I need water because I'm just
so I gotta tell you a story about Darren Waller. It was I think it was 2016 when I discovered a website called playerprofiler.com, and Matt Kelly used to have a program called the Concierge Service. And you could sign up, if I forget it was maybe $50 or $100 a year or something, and then you could like ask him questions. That was the whole point of the Concierge Service. So me, as a new finder of this, not knowing anything about analytics, I'm just like playing with their what is it called, data analysis tool. I think that's what it's called. And you can just like pull different stats and whatever, and like filter, and like it's great. And I started pulling some stats, and I was like, holy smokes, like, who's this Darren Waller guy? And I like get on my email. I should pull it up. I get on my email and I'm like, hey, Matt, I'm a new subscriber. I was just playing with the data analysis, and I'm just curious. I can't find you talking with Darren Waller anywhere. Like, do you not like him? He does all the things that I thought you would like. And he's like, no, he's got a great profile, but I think at the combine, he was only like 220 pounds or something. He's very light, and he's gained a lot of weight since then to become a tight end. He was a wide receiver, I think, in college, wasn't he?
Yeah. And
so anyway, he kind of like extinguished my flame, and then Waller like did nothing with the Ravens, and then ended up in Oakland. And I like years later, it finally worked out. But I was like, man, like that's so cool to be like going back and be like, oh man, like, what is going on here? Look at his college dominator. Look at his breakout age. Or his breakout age wasn't that good. But look at his spark.
He does, though. He has a great profile, except for the fact that he was a 6th-round pick late declare. Like, that's the only thing you have against the guy. But other than that, and it's basically George Kittle as well. Like, he ran a 4.5, 240, 38.5-inch vertical. He was a great athlete, 23% dominator. That's good. 14.3 yards per reception, 95th percentile catch radius. It's all green for this dude. And he had injuries in college. He had missed 4 games as a junior. His senior year was derailed by plantar, however you say it. He had injuries. 5th-round pick. All right, what if he wasn't injured? Like, we're talking 4th. Like, it's maybe 3rd round. That's not terrible. So you look at basically the guys who are at the top of the dynasty landscape right now, and I'm just go by my rankings, but it's a pretty clear cutoff. Like, once you get to Greg Dulcich, I think. But we got Andrews, Pitts, Kelsey, Goddard, Njoku, Hawkinson, Kittle, Freiermuth, Dulcich. These guys are all 1st, 2nd, 3rd round picks, except for George Kittle, who was a 5th round pick out of that whole group. So draft capital is one thing we're definitely looking at. Early declare, I don't think we're going to hold it against the guys who don't have it, but it is a bonus, obviously, if we have early declare. So we're tracking that as well. I have the stats. This is from Sharp Football Analysis. This was written by Rich Rebar. I hope I'm saying that right. It's the first time I've said that, in March 2020. So it's a couple years old, but the stats pretty much going to say the same thing. So past 10 years, they had 146 tight ends who were drafted. 28% of them hit tight end 2 status. And when you break it down, though, between early declare and non-early declare, we have 36% for the early declare, 24% for the non-early declare. Once you move to tight end 1, we have a total percentage of the 146 drafted was 15% hit a tight end 1 finish. Break it down, and we had 20% for the early declares, 12.75 for the non-early declares. Then you go to top 6, we had 9.5% total. You break it down, and we had 15% for the early declare, 6 for the non-early declare. So that's just another something we want to check, just so we can have like the holistic viewpoint. It's not really something that we will hold against them. I have it, yes is marked as green, no is marked as yellow. So it's not a negative, but it is a positive if they're an early declare. And then also we're just looking at like 40 vertical. Like I said, the yards per reception, we want to see if they can be like efficient. But yeah, basically all the guys in the top 9 are 1st, 2nd, 3rd round picks. They all have dominators above 23%. Andrews, Pitts, Kelsey, Goddard, Njoku, Hawkinson, Kittle, Muth, Dulcich. Every single one of them except for Mark Andrews, who is 18%, which is yellow. But he also played with Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb. So it's like, all right, you were at 18%, not 20-something% dominator. We forgive him. He still had 15.5 yards per reception. Like 4.6, 740 is light green. It's not spectacular, but it's not bad. So a lot of this stuff is like the players at the top are showing up green. So tight end is a predictable position, especially once you're looking at factors like that. And then especially once we get past the profile status, like, because that's just about half of it. And then the other half of my chart is the first 4 years of their NFL production, which right now all I have is points per game. But we're obviously looking at things like their efficiency, their targets per route run, their yards per route run, just looking at how much targets they're getting. Obviously, that's a huge data point. What kind of targets are they getting? Are they deep ADOT? Are they low ADOT? So basically, like, what are those going to translate to? Or, less yards, obviously less points. So we want efficient guys who are getting targets at the NFL level. And then obviously we want to target the ones who came in with good profiles and are green, because those are the guys who are sitting at the top of the dynasty landscape right now.
Beyond that, is there anything else that you look at when you're prospecting tight ends, or is that pretty much the gist of it? What about athleticism? You must like athleticism.
Yeah, so we want to look at raw 40 speed. We want to look at vertical again, just to see if they're explosive. And then a lot of that is double checking it. Like, does it show up on the stat sheet? Like, this player's an athlete on paper, but did it show up in his stats? Like, if you run a decent 40, and you have a low yards per reception, that's a lot more concerning than if you run a decent 40 and on stats you had high yards per reception. So we want to see like how it translates, and just kind of like again, that's why we have the kind of holistic view. You can just kind of counterbalance those things a little bit.